Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, and we got three of us working with you today. Far left is,
I'm Bob Anthony. Good to see you, Eric.
in the middle is,
Raymond Peterson.
and I'm Eric Tait. Once again, a little bit of analysis, maybe some commentary on what's going on in the news, in the media, hither and yon.
Yep.
By the time this airs.
Yep.
Next Monday.
We'll have a bit to
Who knows what will be on the top
It's
of
a
the news.
long time.
But I do know what will probably still be percolating will be of the Hillary Clinton emails because of the Inspector General report that came out that our former Secretary of State did not really get any permission from the State Department to use her personal server. So Bob, tell us a little bit about what you heard and what does it all mean?
Well, as a tech person myself, and knowing a little bit about security and what you would do if you're going to work for the government on this level, if you're going to deal with government emails at all, you're going to have to deal with the rules. There's a lot of rules that deal with security, who can see what, the level of access, and how you log in. And so as Secretary of State, she should have been dealing with a government computer locked down somewhere in a government building, something that she has access to. That server for her communications should not have been in her home in any case. But that's what happened. That's exactly what she did. And now she's being, now we're getting confirmation from this investigation done by the Inspector General, which lists the shortcomings of what she did.
Raymond, go.
No, I was just wondering how this starts. I mean, I can see how somebody who is upholding the laws and following procedure can accidentally fall into this type of situation. You know, you have to get in touch with somebody, and you haven't got time to log into, the secure computer, and you're just going to do it on your personal computer. So, it starts with that kind of thing.
Right.
And then slowly but surely you start doing it more and more and more.
Well,
but I think still that she was mindful of the type of information that she was sending.
unfortunately, the problem is not just being mindful about the information. What I gathered from the first blush of the report is that a lot of her communications took place on her personal BlackBerry, and that's easily one of the most hackable kinds of
course.
instruments that you're going to be dealing with. So even if you've got a personal server that might be in some secure place that might be standardly encrypted properly and all that, if you start playing with a BlackBerry out in the ether, Bob, as you and I both know, that is so easily hackable.
Well, on balance, a BlackBerry is more secure than other types of phone communications. There's a couple protocols that BlackBerries use that you don't find in iPhones and an Android phone. So on security, they're a little bit higher, but still it shouldn't have been done this way. You don't do this with even under classified information. Non-classified information is what I'm trying to say. You don't do that. You would use a secure method of communication.
Well, a couple of the other things, Ray, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't a lot of the stuff revealed that a number of those supposed confidential and top secret messages were not classified until after the fact?
They were classified after the fact, yes, absolutely. The government's very good at that. So, they'll give you something today that's classified tomorrow, so you never know.
Okay, so to put it in perspective, it's really bad, but according to one of the headlines that I saw, another online headline, I think it was a New York Times site, Clinton not only official using personal server. So
Yes.
the
Sure,
question then becomes, why is she in the spotlight? And I leave that to you guys to analyze and comment.
Why is she? It's an election year. That's why she's in the spotlight.
Absolutely.
So what you're
very
saying, to paraphrase, is this gives Bernie Sanders a lot more fodder as to why she may not be
Mr. Trump as well.
the best judgmental person for the Oval Office by deciding to use a personal server and not getting permission. And it gives the Republican presumptive nominee, Donald Trump, more fodder for his assault machine.
Because unlike, the Republicans really wrung out the Benghazi story. I mean, they took that to the hilt. They used it for all it was worth until the bitter end when they couldn't really use it anymore.
It's
now
not
they
gone
have
away. It'll come back.
Yes, but now they have something more recent that they can drop in the lap of voters and argue about. But I think it did much more damage to her campaign than it'll ever do to national security. I don't think there's enough there for us to worry about, but I think the campaign damage, well, she basically had it coming.
I think you're right.
I agree with you. Yeah, no, absolutely. She did have it coming. You know, as I mentioned, of course, this gives both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump fodder. I'm more concerned, as I mentioned before, and this is a little off topic, but I'm concerned about the divide in the Democratic Party between the Bernie followers and the Hillary Clinton followers. I mean, we're on the road to destroying the party and ending up with Donald Trump getting the vote.
Let's go down that road. That's worth analyzing, because another one of our good resource persons, Attorney Judith Bourne, sent me an email where one of the online aggregates, I forget which news source it was, had written this analysis, and basically he was saying what's flying under the radar while people are watching the Republicans supposedly self-destructing over Donald Trump is this latent collapse and collision that's in the wings for the Democrats, and you just put your finger on it. Bernie's fans are young, very energetic, not very neocon, pro-war, pro-Iraq, or pro-Afghanistan, pro-whatever, correct?
Correct.
And so, based on what you were saying, take us back to the precedent back in the 60s that this is about to regurgitate on us. 1968?
Yeah, there was 1960.
Eugene McCarthy.
Probably more up on
Eugene McCarthy?
Eugene McCarthy, yeah, he was destroyed.
Right.
But he's the guy who came out of the woodwork and said, Lyndon Johnson, your Vietnam War is not good for the country.
Right.
And all McCarthy's followers back then were just like Bernie's followers today. And so this isn't my analysis. Judith Bourne sent me the article, but the guy laid it out cogently. Basically, he's saying there's a major split coming with all these folk who are really pro-Bernie because they like his stance on non-intervention. He wasn't for the Iraq War.
Right.
He doesn't think we should still be in Afghanistan. Doesn't think we should be doing anything in Syria.
No, I'm going to admit I'm a Bernie fan. I would have loved to have seen him get the nomination. He's not going to. There's no way. Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee. And I'm going to vote for Hillary, but I'm hearing people saying, Bernie or nobody. If Bernie's not nominated, I'm not voting. And that's just absurd. It's total stupidity. To follow that line of thinking, we might as well just say Mr. Trump or Mr. President Trump. How are you doing? We're going to elect the guy if we don't get together on this. Democrats need to stand together, period.
Well, so it's our job to analyze how this may transpire. And so your take is, what you're hearing is that a good many of these diehard Bernie Sanders supporters are so diehard that they will never cross over and support Hillary?
I can't really believe that, but that's what I'm hearing. I mean, that's utter stupidity to me, and I can't believe, I'll forever never believe that the public is as stupid as it actually is.
What signs are you seeing, Bob?
Well, you make a very good point, because I was wondering to myself, how can the Democrats, I couldn't believe anyone could self-destruct better than the Republicans have so far. And the Democrats are showing that we can do it just as well. And that's what's worrying me at this point. You're absolutely right. Because the Bernie folks, the supporters, they're very young, they're energetic. It is really cool to see somebody come up from the grassroots and have this much of an impact, and I think that's what they love.
I think it was wonderful.
The danger with the young support is that, and this is just historically speaking, young folks don't vote. They party, they campaign, but on election day sometimes they just don't want to get out of bed and vote, and it's a terrible thing to say, but I've seen it happen over and over again.
The interesting thing is they came out for Barack Obama. in serious numbers.
Higher
and
than in
not
the
quite
past?
higher than in the past. Yeah,
Okay.
that's how he managed to surprise so many folks. They came out again the second time, but not in the same fervor and the same numbers.
Okay.
And so that is what the Democratic Party is worried about, because all this energy and all this enthusiasm that Bernie Sanders is generating translate to a similar Barack Obama phenomenon. But whereas the Clinton supporters came over to Obama when he defeated her,
Right.
there is no guarantee that these Bernie
you're
Sanders
right.
supporters are going to
You're
come
right.
over. And they really do have cause to worry, because this analysis about the Eugene McCarthy, LBJ thing that caused that brouhaha in Chicago, because those people were so violently opposed to the Vietnam War,
Right.
that could play out again. And if
Right.
that plays out, this is going to be an interesting kind of self-destruct scenario that's going to play out before our eyes. Maureen Dowd had an interesting column in previous Sundays, when this is Monday, not the day before Sunday, the previous Sunday's column, talking about she's never seen, Maureen Dowd, columnist for the New York Times, she's never seen such an amazing political climate where people are voting not because they like their candidate, but because they dislike the other candidate so much on both sides.
No.
And so, according to her analysis, Hillary Clinton is playing on the fear of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is playing on the fear of everything. And it's the worst, most negative reason for anybody to be voting in any political election. And her punchline was, okay, so what do you fear most? And that's her question to the electorate. And if that's how you make your decisions on how you vote, this republic is in serious trouble.
But don't you think that that's the way a lot of people vote? The lesser of two evils?
There is such a thing as the lesser of two evils, but to me, taking it to, because I almost hate that other guy, not lesser of two evils, it's because I really dislike that other guy so much. It's not lesser of two evils in
that's
that
true.
instance.
No,
It's a weird,
Yeah.
weird kind of equation, scenario, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, folks, we shall see how this all unfolds.
We
When
will
when we're here
indeed.
next Monday, who knows what that's going to be. But we don't want to stay on all this crazy nonsense
Right.
just for the entire show.
It's going to be a heck of an election season from here on out.
Oh,
Absolutely.
look, just one last drop of the hat or the stick or the pin or whatever. That huge negativity that Donald Trump rolled out last week when this airs about the Bill Clinton's peccadillos or whatever, the first salvo out of the box.
Right.
It's like, okay, he said that's what he was going to do, and folks didn't really believe it. But guess what? That's who he is. That's what he did. So it's going to be interesting to see whether that backfires. I mean, I think that's a serious, huge low to come out of the box. But this guy has come out of the box with huge lows and continue to rise.
And we have not seen the bottom yet.
That's my point. So if he can call Mexicans rapists, muggers, robbers, whatever, and rise to get the nomination, he can talk about Bill Clinton's sex life all the way to getting the presidential election successful. But enough of politics on this one. There's some other things in the news that we need to at least take a look at and maybe look at from different perspective. A couple of trials and possible trials coming up. Freddie Gray's the death of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. The first trial, one of the police officers, I believe there were 7, I think.
This
This was the second trial. This was the second trial, right. The first one was a hung jury.
Right.
Okay, and this particular officer requested a straight judge, no jury trial. And that judge came out with a ruling that he was not guilty of any of the charges. And so, of course, that is 0 for 2 for the Baltimore prosecutor.
Well,
Okay.
and the
0 and
other
a
one-
half.
Yes.
0 and a half.
Correct.
Because they may bring that one back up.
Right.
But she's not doing too well. But the city of Baltimore is not happy about that verdict. And so the bottom line is it looks like another skewed justice system, but not necessarily. I haven't really analyzed what the judge had to say about all the points that the prosecutor made. He may have come down with a basically sound judgment, don't know. But the fact that another black woman died in a Texas jail about 10 days ago,
Right.
just because the police refused to give her medication that she needed for 2 entire weeks. The fact that a Pennsylvania judge has just remanded Bill Cosby, or whatever the term is, he must stand trial for that sexual assault in the state of Pennsylvania. It looks like black people are not faring too well in the criminal justice system in this country. And so after all that stuff, I decided to Google criminal justice system bias.
Okay.
Okay? Just on the outside chance that all the anecdotal stuff I've been seeing, reading, hearing was just that. And a whole page came up on the first hit, and it was racial justice bias in the criminal justice system. So and so, all the way down.
Okay.
So I read some of it and sent you guys some of it. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, no,
But there were 2 studies that that were really, really instrumental. And the bottom line is, folks, just to cut short because we don't want to read the entire thing, yes, there is racial bias in the criminal justice system. It's been documented, and a lot of it sometimes tends to be, what's the phrase? Unconscious?
Implicit?
Implicit, yes, the phrase. Does unconscious racial bias affect trial judges? Was the title of one study. And the bottom line is, yeah, it does. But the judges can actually take steps to try to guard against it once they're aware that they need to guard against it.
Right.
But the finding was, but do all judges do that?
Right.
And the odds are, probably in the hecticness of a day-to-day work, probably not. but the second study, which had to do with a group of researchers from Tufts University, and they wrote in the journal Policy Insights from the Behavioral and Brain Sciences. That was the official scientific document they published their study in. The name of the researchers were Samuel Summers and Sasha Murata. And they write that while overt prejudice is surely a factor in some cases, unconscious or implicit racial biases can also taint legal decision making. All of us, regardless of personal ideology or professional oath, are susceptible to such biases, even when making life and death decisions. That's what they wrote in the journal. And starting with the police, the researchers cite the U.S. District Court's 2013 ruling on, guess what? The New York Police Department stop and frisk policy. 52% of African Americans and 31% of Latinos, despite respective general population rates in the city of 23 and 29%. And although stops of African Americans and Latinos were actually less likely to yield weapons or contraband than were stops of whites, that they stopped them more often.
Right. Same
data show that use of force occurred in 23% of stops of African Americans and 24% of stops of Latinos, but in only 17% of stops of whites. In spite of the fact that, quote, African Americans and Latino New Yorkers were actually less likely to possess contraband than their white counterparts. Okay. So conscious or unconscious racism also plays a role in how a black person is treated once arrested. The researchers point to a 2008 study that found prosecutors more likely to charge capital murder and seek the death penalty in cases with black defendants and or white victims.
Now, all those numbers, they worry me, because what's the current proposal in New York? To take some of these low-level crimes and give the police officer the option of arresting or giving a ticket. Now, there's going to be, we don't know if bias will play its way into that. Will Columbia students get a ticket and the folks outside campus get arrested? That's what I like, Those numbers worry me, and that's good research you've quoted one after the other.
These guys, they basically, and you know what? A good bulk of these studies done in 2008, 2009, before all this new stuff hit the fan, before all these cell phone videos and all these cameras and all this stuff came into play, and so what the researchers, and I didn't even open up more than 3 of those Googles because I'd have been reading for days on all these studies about the racial bias in the criminal justice system. But it's interesting because these same guys, not the first study, said race can influence what happens in court as well.
Do these numbers surprise you, Ray?
No, not at all. It's the reason that more blacks were found to be not in possession of dangerous weapons or drugs. It's because 3 times as many black people were stopped
Okay.
as white people.
So
So we're going back to this is racial profiling.
No, it is racial, but no, trust me. It's not just the sheer numbers.
okay.
The percentage-wise,
Right.
because when we
right.
did this study earlier, when we did stop and frisk,
Right.
the percentage of the black and brown people having weapons were going to be less than the white people that they stop and frisk.
right.
Not the total numbers,
No.
the percentage. They found less weapons
Right.
in the black
Yes.
and brown stops than when they're white stops.
Right.
That's what we discovered when we were doing when the judge came down with the ruling when we
Right.
did
And
this
we
story.
covered that fairly thoroughly
Yes.
on the show.
It's just bizarre. But she picked the right study. But guess what? They were saying that this is endemic across the country. It's not just New York. It's not just New York. So what I'm worried about, what I'm thinking now is, so we know that a whole bunch of women came out of the woodwork to accuse Bill Cosby. Okay? So if there's strength in numbers, Bill
Yes.
Cosby's already under the bus. but who's to say, if Bill Cosby was a different racial makeup, if he might not have walked because of what's in this. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate
Sure,
here,
sure.
but the fact of the matter is, the most notorious case that we all know about, the black guy got off because the glove didn't fit. But everybody in the country
Right.
says he's guilty, despite the fact that he was not convicted in a court of law. And guess what? They actually didn't prove it in a court of law.
No.
So you got overt bias, implicit bias, and all racial stuff in that one case. So I hate to use that as the poster child because I think if they hadn't tampered with the evidence, jury might have gone the other way. But the fact that they tampered with the evidence.
And and I'm going to be brief on this. I saw a couple of episodes of a new documentary on OJ.
Talk to us about that.
OJ in America, done by a young director named Ezra. I just want to quote his name correctly. Ezra Edelman. And he was there for a screening last week. And he just screened the first 2 episodes. But in the first 2 episodes, he packages the fact that OJ really didn't exist past a certain point, past college, in the African American world. He was so tied up in the glamour, in the money,
Celebrity.
in the celebrity, and while other athletes of the time were talking civil rights, he was collecting checks, doing movies, and really not saying anything.
Running through airports and commercials.
Exactly.
Making a ton of money.
Right. But when you, as a representative of even African American athletes, that wasn't him.
No.
So when he goes to trial with almost the aura of being white.
Until Newsweek does a cover, or was it Time, or both?
Right.
Remember,
I forgot
remember that. Oh, I
That-
never forget things like that,
that-
because that's how race impacts everything in this
Well,
society.
tell them what they did with the
all,
cover.
all of a sudden, OJ, who's probably your complexion,
I
Right.
remember,
on the
yeah,
cover
no, I
comes
remember
out
that,
my
yeah.
complexion. so he was immediately ejected from his white status back into black status
That's very
as
good.
soon as he went to trial. That cover was just so racist and so abhorrently.
No, you're
it was
absolutely
just so could never forget that one.
It wasn't even in the day of Photoshop, so it was actually had to be manually
They had to
darkened.
work on that one.
Right.
so yeah, I mean, but see that gets to just how how race and connectedness and privilege plays a role in this society. Along those lines, there was a very interesting thing. I think we got about 2.5 minutes
Yeah, we have
left.
about 2 minutes.
Real quick.
And change.
National Security Advisor Susan Rice gave a commencement speech at one of the colleges. Didn't stay in my brain when I read it, but the story stuck me because part of her commencement speech was, we need you young people to get out there, and it was probably at a historically black college because part of it was Foreign Service been, to quote, and she quoted a Georgia senator, so it may have been, or was it an Alabama senator? Foreign policy has been white, male, and Yale. Okay? No, she didn't make this up. She quoted a white male who made the statement to say we need to diversify the Foreign Service. Well, hit the fan, okay? And so in perusing news stuff and aggregate stuff, the Fox Nation people covered that story. And boy, they just lit into her for that white male and Yale thing and da-da-da. And how come competency doesn't enter into this anymore, and with diversity? And I just said, the woman didn't say she wanted incompetent diverse people.
Right.
She just wanted diverse people. But
Sure.
they went immediately to,
Sure.
oh, she's just talking diversity, she doesn't care about competency, etc. Kept scrolling, I came across a foreign policy online tabloid on the same story. Night and day.
Okay.
Foreign policy issue, Rice puts finger on fact that more diversity needed.
Say.
We're screwing our own foreign policy service if we don't get more diversity. I mean, they ran the story the way it should have been run.
Okay.
Guess what? The lady is right. Real quick, when I was getting out of college, I had a professor, because I was taking international relations, you need to go into the diplomatic corps. We got nobody like you in the diplomatic corps. And guess what? It's always been run by those people from Princeton and Yale. This is my professor back in, you know how far back I was in college? He was saying it then, okay? So you know what the problem is.
We got about
It's been
40 seconds.
Yeah, so diversity is still a problem. Race is still a major problem. Look, this has been Media Watch.
Yeah.
The three of us has been working with you.
I'm Bob Anthony. Please catch up to us on YouTube on Media Watch EVT.
Raymond Peterson, thank you, Eric Tait. Bob Anthony.
And I'm Eric Tait, and we got to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions for once again allowing us to come kibitz with you, and we'll catch you the next time.